Hi there. Tonight we journey back to a time when the world was vast and untamed, a time of thunderous hooves and wind-whipped steppes, to explore what life was truly like for women in the mighty Mongol Empire. Imagine the crisp, biting wind whipping across your face, carrying the scent of horses and wood smoke. You're not just an observer. You are a young woman living amidst the nomadic tribes of Central Asia, centuries before TikTok or even indoor plumbing. Frankly, you probably wouldn't survive a week, let alone thrive, in this utterly unforgiving landscape. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your earliest memories are of movement. The world isn't a fixed place with four walls. It's an endless horizon that shifts with the seasons, guided by the needs of your animals. As a young girl in a nomadic Mongol camp, you learn to adapt before you even learn to walk properly. Every spring, the entire camp packs up. The circular felt tents, the gers, or yurts, as they're more commonly known, are dismantled with startling speed. The wooden trellises collapse, the felt coverings are rolled, and within hours, your entire home is loaded onto carts pulled by oxen or camels, ready for the next pasture. It's a bit like a perpetual family road trip, only instead of a minivan, you have a vast herd of sheep, goats, horses, and cattle. And instead of rest stops, you have, well, more step. You quickly learn that everything has a purpose, every action is efficient. There's no room for excess baggage, literally or figuratively. When your survival depends on swift migration, life on the steppe demands an acute awareness of your surroundings. You develop an almost instinctual connection to nature, the subtle shift in the wind that signals a coming storm, the texture of the grass that indicates good grazing, the call of a distant wolf. This isn't just picturesque. It's practical knowledge that determines whether your family eats, stays warm, or even survives the harsh winters. You learn to interpret these signs with a keenness that would put modern meteorologists to shame. Though probably with less fancy equipment, historians still argue whether this deep connection to nature was primarily spiritual or purely pragmatic for nomadic peoples. Perhaps it was both, a necessity that became intertwined with belief. From the youngest age, your hands are never idle. While the boys might be learning to ride and hunt, you're observing your mother, your aunts, and the older girls, absorbing their wisdom through endless repetition. There are no schools here, no formal lessons. Your education is woven into the fabric of daily life. You learn to process animal hides, turning raw, stiff skins into pliable leather, a skill that requires immense strength and patience. You learn to milk the mares, a tricky business, and to churn that milk into airag, a fermented mare's milk that's both a staple drink and a mild alcoholic beverage. It's an acquired taste, for sure, and definitely not what you'd find in your local grocery store's dairy aisle. You also learn the intricate art of felt making, pounding layers of wool together to create the thick, insulated coverings for your gear, a truly communal effort where the rhythmic thud of mallets provides the soundtrack to your days. This constant physical engagement with your environment builds a resilience that runs deeper than any fortified wall. You understand, perhaps more than anyone in a sedentary society, that life is a delicate balance, and every individual's contribution is essential for the collective survival of the Obog, your clan. It's a bit like a well-oiled machine, where even the smallest cog has a crucial role. And if one breaks, the whole system might just grind to a halt. Your childhood isn't filled with toys or elaborate games. Instead, your playtime often doubles as practical training, subtly preparing you for the demanding life ahead. You learn to ride almost as soon as you can walk, perched precariously on a small pony, its shaggy mane tickling your legs. It's not just a skill, it's a fundamental part of your identity. You become one with the horse, understanding its moods, its capabilities, and how to guide it across challenging terrain. You learn to ride bareback, feeling every ripple of muscle beneath you, developing an almost acrobatic balance that serves you well when galloping across uneven ground. This mastery of horsemanship isn't just for fun or travel. It's essential for herding, for moving camp, and, if necessary, for escape. Some historians still argue whether Mongol women's equestrian skills were truly on par with men's, but there's no doubt they were exceptional by any other standard. You definitely wouldn't see them struggling to parallel park beyond riding. Your hands are busy with a myriad of domestic tasks that are far from domestic in the modern sense. You learn to sew, but not with delicate needles and threads for decorative purposes. Your needles are made of bone, your thread from sinew, and you stitch together heavy hides, creating sturdy clothing, boots, and bags that protect against the fierce steppe elements. This isn't just about fashion, it's about survival. A poorly sewn seam could mean frostbite in the brutal winter. You learn to identify edible plants and berries, a crucial skill during lean times or when meat is scarce. And you learn which plants are poisonous, a rather vital piece of knowledge that prevents unfortunate culinary accidents. Imagine trying to identify a toxic berry on your phone. Not an option out here. You also master the art of butchering, a messy but necessary skill. When an animal is slaughtered, no part goes to waste. You learn to efficiently break down a carcass, separating meat, bones, fat, and organs, each destined for a specific use. The blood might be used in sausages, the intestines cleaned for casings, the bones boiled for broth, and the fat rendered for cooking or fuel. This holistic approach to resources is deeply ingrained, born of necessity in an environment where scarcity is a constant companion. It's an early lesson in sustainability, long before anyone invented the term. Your training also includes understanding the social hierarchy and customs of your tribe. You learn to defer to elders, to respect the wisdom of those who have survived more winters, and to understand the unspoken rules of communal living. Privacy is a luxury you rarely experience in the close confines of the Ger, so you learn to navigate social dynamics with a keen awareness of others. You learn the importance of hospitality, offering food and drink to any traveler who approaches your camp. For today's guest might be tomorrow's ally, or even a relative you haven't yet met. This deep-seated tradition of welcoming strangers is a quirky tidbit of Mongol culture that contrasts sharply with the often feared image of their warriors. It's a bit like finding out your favorite metal band knits sweaters in their spare time. Your role, even as a young girl, is clear: to contribute meaningfully to the household's survival and prosperity. There are no illusions of a leisurely childhood. Every day presents new challenges and opportunities to hone your skills. You watch the older women with respect, understanding that their quiet strength, their tireless work ethic, and their vast practical knowledge are the bedrock of the entire nomadic society. They are the keepers of the home, the nurturers, and the silent organizers who ensure the camp functions smoothly, while the men are often away hunting or campaigning. This foundational training builds a resilient spirit, a practical mind, and a deep understanding of your place within the intricate web of family and tribe, preparing you for whatever the unpredictable step life might throw your way. As you transition from girlhood to young womanhood, the concept of marriage takes on a profound, almost unavoidable significance. It's not primarily about love or personal choice in the way modern society understands it. Rather, it's a strategic alliance, a carefully negotiated transaction that can elevate your family's status, forge crucial political bonds, or even avert potential conflicts. You are a valuable asset, and your hand in marriage is a tool your father and male relatives wield with precision. The idea of dating or courtship is virtually non-existent. Instead, there are often intricate negotiations between families, sometimes spanning months, involving gifts and promises. It's less like a romantic comedy and more like a high-stakes business merger, where you are the primary asset. Your marriage might be arranged with someone you've never met from a distant clan, or perhaps with a cousin within your own obog to solidify existing ties. Sometimes, a bride price known as Kaleem is paid by the groom's family, usually in livestock, reflecting your value in terms of labor, childbearing potential, and the prestige you bring. Conversely, your family might offer a dowry, though this was less common among early Mongols than a bride price. This exchange isn't about selling you. It's about formalizing the transfer of labor and loyalty from one family unit to another. One quirky tidbit: sometimes, if a younger brother died, the elder brother might marry his widow, a practice known as levirate marriage, ensuring the continuity of the family line and the protection of the widow and her children. It kept property within the family, which, from a purely economic standpoint, made a lot of sense. Historians still argue whether such practices were primarily economic or had deeper social or religious roots. The moment you leave your birth family to join your husband's obog is a significant transition. You are expected to assimilate fully, to adopt their customs, and to contribute immediately to their household. This means proving your competence in all the myriad tasks you've been trained for since childhood: setting up the game, preparing food, caring for animals, making felt, and raising children. Your reputation, and by extension, your birth family's honor, depends on your diligence and obedience. There's no grace period. You hit the ground running, often literally, across the step dot. For women of high-ranking families, marriage could mean even greater political implications. A daughter of a tribal chief or a powerful warrior might be married into another influential family to cement a peace treaty or secure military assistance. These women often had a difficult balancing act, serving as a bridge between two clans, constantly navigating loyalties. Their personal happiness was almost always secondary to the strategic benefit of the alliance. Imagine the pressure of knowing your entire tribe's future might hinge on your ability to get along with your new mother-in-law, despite the lack of personal choice. Marriage provided a degree of stability and defined your place within the intricate social structure. As a married woman, you gained a new set of responsibilities and, in some ways, a different kind of authority within your husband's household. You were no longer merely a daughter. You were a wife and future mother, essential to the continuation of the lineage. This transformation, though externally driven, marked your full entry into the adult world of the Mongol steppe. It's a stark contrast to modern notions of individual autonomy, yet within their context, these arranged marriages were the very bedrock of tribal cohesion and survival. Your new home, the ger or yurt, is much more than just a tent. It's the beating heart of your family's existence, a portable sanctuary meticulously designed for the nomadic lifestyle. As a newly married woman, a significant part of your duties revolves around its maintenance and efficient operation. You quickly learn the precise movements required to set it up and take it down, a dance perfected over generations. The wooden lattice frame expands like an accordion. The roof poles slot into a central ring that serves as a smoke hole, and then the heavy felt layers are meticulously draped and secured. It's a remarkable piece of engineering, capable of withstanding the fiercest steppe winds and the harshest winter blizzards. One mainstream historical fact about the ger is its incredible efficiency. A skilled team, often led by women, could erect or dismantle one in under an hour. Try doing that with your flat-pack furniture. Inside the ger, every inch of space is utilized with purpose, and there's a clear, traditional division of labor. The northern side, directly opposite the entrance, is considered the most sacred, often reserved for the family's altar, images of ancestors, and important possessions like weapons or musical instruments. This is generally the men's domain. The western side is typically for the men and their guests, while the eastern side is where you, as a woman, spend most of your time. This is where the cooking happens, where the children are cared for, and where many of the daily chores unfold. It's like a compact, circular, multi-purpose living room, kitchen, and nursery all rolled into one. Historians still argue whether this spatial division reflected a strict patriarchal hierarchy or a practical distribution of labor in a shared living space. Your days within the ger are a constant hum of activity. You are responsible for tending the central hearth, ensuring a steady fire for warmth and cooking. The smoke from the fire escapes through the tonneau, the smoke hole at the top, which also serves as a natural clock, allowing sunlight to stream in and track the time of day. You learn to manage the precious fuel, dried dung and sparse wood, with extreme care, understanding that a wasted ember could mean a cold night. It's a bit like trying to keep your phone charged when there's only one outlet and everyone needs it. Beyond the fire, you oversee the preparation of all meals. This involves everything from churning milk to boiling meat, and sometimes, for special occasions, preparing more elaborate dishes. You also maintain the various containers for food and drink, from leather pouches for air rag to wooden bowls and spoons. Cleanliness, while perhaps not to modern Western standards, is diligently maintained within the ger to prevent disease, especially given the constant presence of animals and the nomadic lifestyle. You sweep the dirt floor, tidy belongings, and ensure that the bedding, often made from animal skins and felt, is clean and aired. The ger is also the primary site for your crafting activities. Here you spin wool, weave ropes, repair clothing, and prepare hides. The rhythmic sounds of your work, the soft thud of felt being pounded, the gentle creak of a hand spindle, the sizzle of meat over the fire, create a comforting backdrop to daily life. It's a fascinating quirk of Mongol life that despite its mobility, the ger fostered a deep sense of settled domesticity within its felt walls. It was a place of comfort, family, and ceaseless work, a microcosm of the entire nomadic existence, all under a single, portable roof. Your days are a ceaseless cycle of practical tasks, each contributing directly to the survival and well-being of your family. There's no concept of free time in the modern sense. Every waking moment, from dawn until dusk, is dedicated to some form of labor. The very air vibrates with the purposeful hum of daily chores. One of your most fundamental and constant duties is food preparation. This isn't just about cooking. It begins much earlier, often with the milking of mares and yaks at specific times of the day. You master the rhythmic pull and release, collecting the frothy milk into large wooden buckets, a task that requires both strength and patience, especially with a particularly stubborn animal. After milking, the milk transforms under your skillful hands. You churn fresh milk into butter, a laborious process that can take hours. You also prepare ROL, dried curds, by pressing the milk solids and leaving them to dry in the sun. These small, rock-hard pieces are a staple, providing a concentrated source of protein and calcium, perfect for nomadic life as they're lightweight and last indefinitely. They're a bit like the original energy bars, though with a texture that might challenge your modern dental work. You also oversee the fermentation of mare's milk into airag, a process requiring careful monitoring of temperature and consistency. This involves repeatedly stirring and agitating the milk in a large leather bag until it reaches the desired tangy, slightly alcoholic state. Beyond dairy, you are responsible for preparing meat, which is the cornerstone of the Mongol diet, especially in winter. This often involves boiling large cuts of mutton or beef in communal pots, often with minimal seasoning beyond salt, to create hearty, warming stews. You learn to make borts, air-dried meat, by thinly slicing meat and hanging it to dry in the wind and sun. This method preserves meat for long periods, providing a vital food source during long journeys or lean months. It's like having a shelf-stable protein supply, though significantly less appealing than a can of tuna. A quirky tidbit: the Mongols were known to carry borts under their saddles, using the heat and pressure of the horse's back to tenderize it, effectively cooking it on the go. Talk about fast food. Craftsmanship is another significant part of your daily rhythm. You are constantly repairing clothing, often made from felt or animal skins, patching tears and reinforcing seams with strong sinew thread. You might be involved in making new garments, carefully cutting patterns from hides and stitching them together with bone needles. You also work with felt, pounding layers of wool to create the thick coverings for the gar, as well as insulated boots, hats, and saddle. Blankets. This is a highly collaborative effort, often involving several women working together, their mallets creating a rhythmic symphony. Historians still argue whether the division of labor was strictly defined or more fluid, adapting to household needs and individual skills. Your hands are never truly still. When not directly engaged in these tasks, you might be gathering dried dung for fuel, tending to young children, or mending broken tools. Every action is purposeful, every movement efficient. This constant engagement with tangible tasks provides a deep satisfaction, a sense of direct contribution to your family's survival. There's no ambiguity about your value. Your labor is the very foundation upon which your nomadic life is built. While the men are often associated with the grand spectacle of horse riding and hunting, your role in herding and animal care is equally, if not more, fundamental to the survival and prosperity of your obog. The vast herds of horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and camels are the lifeblood of the Mongol nomadic economy, providing everything from food and clothing to transportation and shelter. You, as a woman, are intricately involved in their daily management, often taking primary responsibility for the smaller, more vulnerable animals, and playing a crucial supporting role for the larger livestock. It's a bit like being the head of operations for a very large, very mobile, and sometimes very stubborn farm. Your mornings often begin with the sounds of the herd stirring. You participate in the milking of mares, yaks, and goats, a daily ritual that provides the fresh milk, essential for immediate consumption and for making fermented products like airag and aruel. This requires a gentle touch and an understanding of animal behavior. A skittish mare can kick, and a goat can be surprisingly resistant to cooperation. You quickly learn to read their subtle cues, approaching them with a calm assurance that comes from years of interaction. This isn't just a chore, it's a vital connection to the animals that sustain your life. Beyond milking, you are often responsible for tending to the young and sick animals. A newborn lamb, orphaned or weak, might be brought into the ger to be warmed by the fire and fed by hand, a testament to the preciousness of every single animal. You learn rudimentary veterinary skills, recognizing signs of illness or injury and administering traditional remedies, often using herbs gathered from the steppe. This is vital in preventing disease from spreading through the herd, a devastating event that could cripple your family's resources. One mainstream historical fact is that the Mongols practiced a form of transhumance, moving their herds seasonally to find the best pastures, and women were integral to managing the logistics of these massive movements. During the harsh winters, your duties intensify. You might be involved in ensuring that animals are sheltered from blizzards, clearing snow from crucial grazing areas, or breaking ice for them to drink. You also help to gather and prepare fodder if the grazing is insufficient, often collecting dried grasses or making arrangements for supplemental feed. It's relentless work, driven by the knowledge that your family's survival literally depends on the health of your animals. There's no calling in sick when the sheep are freezing. A quirky tidbit is the Mongols' deep respect for horses, viewing them not just as animals, but as companions and spiritual beings. While men might have been the riders in battle, women were often the primary caregivers, understanding their temperament and needs intimately. This bond was crucial, as a healthy horse meant a strong army and a prosperous family. Historians still argue whether the Mongol reliance on horses was the sole factor in their military success, or if other cultural elements were equally significant. But for you, the woman of the ger, the horses were quite simply family. Your days are punctuated by the sounds of the herd, the bleating of sheep, the lowing of cattle, the whinny of horses, the guttural grumble of camels. These sounds are a constant reminder of your responsibilities and your deep connection to the animals that share your nomadic existence. Your care ensures their health, which in turn ensures your family's survival, making your contribution to animal husbandry not just important, but absolutely indispensable. When it comes to food and sustenance, the Mongol diet is remarkably simple, yet ingeniously adapted to the demands of nomadic life and the resources of the vast steppe. Your culinary repertoire isn't about exotic spices or elaborate recipes. It's about making the most of what you have: dairy and meat. This reliance isn't a choice, but a necessity, dictated by the environment which offers little in the way of arable land for extensive farming. You become a master alchemist, transforming animal products into a surprisingly diverse range of nourishing foods. The cornerstone of your diet is dairy. You begin each day with milk, fresh, fermented, or dried. Mare's milk, specifically, is highly prized, and you spend significant time processing it into airag, the slightly alcoholic, tangy beverage that is both refreshing and nutritious. The process of making airag involves continuous churning in a large leather bag, a physical task that you perform with practiced ease. You also make kumis from cow's milk, though it's less common than mare's milk, airag. Beyond drinks, you produce various forms of dried curds, or aruel, which are essentially rock-hard cheese nuggets. These are perfect for journeys or for winter, providing a vital source of protein and energy when fresh food is scarce. They're like nature's imperishable trail mix, if trail mix were much, much harder to chew. Meat is the other pillar. Mutton is the most common, followed by beef, goat, and occasionally horse meat, particularly from older animals. When an animal is slaughtered, usually in autumn, to build up winter stores, no part goes to waste. You skillfully butcher the carcass, separating muscles, organs, fat, and bones. The meat is often boiled into hearty stews, simple yet incredibly sustaining, perfect for warding off the steppes chill. Sometimes it's roasted over an open fire, a rare treat. A mainstream historical fact is that the Mongols developed sophisticated methods of preserving meat, such as air drying it into boats, to ensure food security throughout the year and during military campaigns. This prepackaged, lightweight source of protein was crucial for their army's mobility. Fat is highly valued, providing essential calories and warmth in the cold climate. You render animal fat for cooking, and also use it in some traditional remedies. You might even consume raw fat for quick energy during particularly cold stretches. Vegetables and grains are a rarity in your diet, obtained mainly through trade with settled communities or foraged in limited quantities during the warmer months. You might find wild onions, garlic, or a few hardy berries, adding a fleeting freshness to your otherwise meat and dairy-centric meals. This lack of dietary diversity might seem strange to modern palates, but for the Mongols, it was a perfectly balanced and efficient way to thrive in their environment. Historians still argue whether the Mongol diet contributed to their physical hardiness or was simply a necessary adaptation, a quirky tidbit. The Mongol way of cooking was often communal and incredibly efficient. Large cuts of meat would be boiled in a central pot, and everyone would gather round, taking pieces as they pleased. This fostered a strong sense of community and shared sustenance, making mealtime more than just about eating, but about reinforcing familial bonds. Your hands are the heart of this process, transforming the raw bounty of the steppe into the life-giving fuel that sustains your family, day after demanding day. Your dress and adornment are far more than mere fashion statements. They are deeply functional, reflecting the practical demands of nomadic life, the harsh steppe, climate, and your social status within the obog. Every stitch, every layer, serves a purpose designed to protect you from scorching summers and brutally cold winters, while also communicating aspects of your identity. It's a bit like wearing a high-performance survival suit that also happens to be culturally significant. The foundation of your wardrobe is the deal, a long, loose robe, traditionally made from felt, wool, or silk, depending on your family's wealth and the season. The deal is a marvel of practical design. It wraps around your body, overlapping significantly in the front and fastened with several buttons or ties. This overlap provides extra layers of warmth over your chest, crucial for protecting vital organs from the cold. It's a bit like wearing multiple sweaters woven into one garment. In summer, you might wear a lighter cotton or silk deal, while in winter, it's heavily padded with felt or animal furs, often sheepskin. Underneath, you wear simple trousers, ensuring freedom of movement for riding and daily tasks. Layering is key to surviving the dramatic temperature swings of the steppe. You might wear several deals of varying thickness, adding or shedding layers throughout the day as the temperature dictates. Your boots, typically made of thick leather with felt lining, are sturdy and warm, designed for riding and walking long distances. They often have upturned toes, a clever design feature that helps you keep your feet in the stirrups while riding. Hats are also indispensable. In winter, you wear a fur-lined hat with ear flaps to protect against frostbite. In summer, lighter hats provide shade from the relentless sun. One mainstream historical fact is that the deal's practical design allowed for easy riding and was adopted by many cultures influenced by the Mongols. Adornment, while less about frivolous fashion, still plays an important role in expressing identity and status. Married women often wear elaborate headdresses, especially for special occasions or when visiting other camps. These can range from simpler caps to incredibly ornate constructions adorned with precious metals, pearls, and feathers, signifying wealth and family prestige. Your hair, typically worn in 2 long braids, might also be decorated with silver ornaments or beads interwoven into the plaits. Jewelry, such as earrings, necklaces, and bracelets, often made of silver, coral, or turquoise, might be passed down through generations, serving as family heirlooms and a display of accumulated wealth. A quirky tidbit: the famous Bokta headdress, a towering structure worn by Mongol noblewomen, was so elaborate it sometimes required a servant to help hold it in place. Imagine trying to get through a doorway with that on. The materials used in your clothing, primarily animal products like wool, felt, and leather, are direct gifts from your herds, reinforcing the deep connection between your lifestyle and the animals you tend. Even the dyes used for your fabrics might come from natural sources, creating earthy tones that blend seamlessly with the steppe landscape. Historians still argue about the exact origins of some traditional Mongol designs, whether they evolved purely from practical necessity or incorporated influences from neighboring cultures. Regardless, your attire is a testament to ingenious adaptation, a blend of functionality, tradition, and quiet elegance, ensuring your survival and reflecting your place in the vibrant tapestry of Mongol life. In the vast, open spaces of the steppe, where the forces of nature hold undeniable sway, religion and spirituality permeate every aspect of your life. There are no grand temples or elaborate ceremonies in the sedentary sense. Instead, your faith is deeply intertwined with the natural world, a direct relationship with the spirits that inhabit the sky, the earth, and all living things. This ancient belief system, often referred to as Tengrism or animism, is as boundless as the horizon, and you, as a woman, play a crucial role in its daily observance. Your spiritual world revolves around Tengri, the eternal blue sky, who is seen as the supreme deity, the source of all power and destiny. You offer daily reverence to Tengri, acknowledging his overarching influence on your life, your herds, and the weather that dictates your very survival. Below Tengri are countless spirits inhabiting the mountains, rivers, trees, and your very own Gurma. You are taught to respect these spirits, to make small offerings, and to avoid offending them, lest they bring misfortune. It's a bit like navigating a neighborhood full of invisible, powerful landlords who can make your life wonderful or miserable, depending on your behavior. Shamanism is the conduit through which you communicate with this spirit world. Shamans, often both men and women, serve as spiritual intermediaries, healers, and seers. You might witness a shamanic ritual where the shaman enters a trance state, drumming and chanting to connect with spirits, seeking guidance for important decisions, healing for the sick, or protection for the community. These rituals are often powerful and awe-inspiring, reinforcing the invisible forces at play in your world. A quirky tidbit: Some Mongol shamans were believed to be able to control the weather, a highly valued skill on the unpredictable steppe. Imagine being able to summon rain during a drought. Within the ger, your mother and other older women often lead simple, daily rituals. Before meals, a small offering of milk or food might be flicked towards the heavens or sprinkled on the ground as an offering to the sky and earth spirits. When you move camp, a small ceremony might be performed to ask for a safe journey and blessings on the new pasture. These seemingly small acts are profound expressions of your constant connection to the spiritual realm, integrating faith seamlessly into mundane tasks. Historians still argue whether Tengrism was a singular, unified religion or a collection of diverse, localized beliefs across the steppe tribes. You also participate in important family rituals, such as those related to births, marriages, and deaths, which are all imbued with spiritual significance. The ancestors are highly revered, believed to watch over the living and influence their fortunes. Offerings might be made to ancestral spirits, and their wisdom invoked during difficult times. The practice of divination, often using the shoulder bones of sheep, is also common, providing a means to seek answers about the future or the cause of misfortune. Your spiritual life provides a framework for understanding the world, a sense of meaning in the face of hardship, and a powerful connection to your community and the vast natural environment. It's a pragmatic spirituality focused on balance and harmony, ensuring your survival in a world where the spirits of the wind and earth are as real and tangible as the horses that carry you across the endless steppe. The continuation of your lineage, the very survival of your obog, hinges on the sacred role of children and motherhood. From a young age, you are taught that bearing and raising healthy offspring is one of your most vital contributions. While the men go to war and hunt, you are the cradle of the future, ensuring the continuity of the nomadic way of life. This isn't just a biological imperative, it's a deep cultural responsibility imbued with profound respect. It's a bit like being entrusted with the master key to the future, except the key is a tiny, often very noisy, human being. Pregnancy and childbirth on the steppe are naturally fraught with challenges. There are no modern hospitals, no trained doctors with sterile instruments. You rely on the wisdom of older women, the experienced grandmothers and matriarchs who have guided countless births. Childbirth typically takes place within the ger, a private yet communal affair where women support each other. You learn to be stoic, to endure pain with quiet strength, a trait honed by the harsh realities of your environment. After birth, both mother and child are given special care and protection, sometimes resting by the warmth of the fire, seen as particularly vulnerable to malevolent spirits. A mainstream historical fact is that infant mortality rates were exceptionally high in nomadic societies, making each successful birth a cause for communal celebration. Once born, children are embraced by the entire family. They are raised in the close confines of the gar, constantly surrounded by adults and older siblings, learning by observation and imitation. Your infants are often swaddled tightly and placed in a cradle, designed to be easily carried or hung from the ger's framework, allowing you to work while keeping your baby safe. As they grow, they spend much of their time outdoors, developing an early resilience to the elements. There's no such thing as baby-proofing the steppe. Children learn quickly about the dangers and practicalities of their environment. Your role as a mother extends beyond basic care. You are your child's first teacher, imparting the practical skills necessary for survival. You teach your daughters to sew, to cook, to process milk, and to care for younger siblings. You teach your sons basic riding skills and respect for animals, preparing them for their eventual roles as herders and warriors. This early education, informal yet thorough, is crucial for perpetuating the nomadic traditions. Historians still argue about the extent to which gender roles were strictly defined versus fluid, but the primary responsibility for early child rearing undeniably fell to women. A quirky tidbit: Mongol children were often given practical, sometimes humorous names at birth, which might later be changed to a more formal name upon reaching adulthood or achieving something significant. This reflected a belief in avoiding evil spirits by not giving them an easy target, and also a pragmatic approach to identity. Imagine being named Little Turnip for the first few years of your life. Motherhood is also a source of status and respect within the Obog. A woman who bears many healthy children, especially sons, contributes directly to the strength and future of her husband's lineage. Your ability to nurture and raise the next generation of warriors, herders, and mothers secures your position and ensures your legacy in a world where continuity is paramount. The laughter and cries of children are the most vital sounds in the ger, a constant reminder of life's preciousness and the enduring power of family on the boundless steppe. The omnipresent spectre of warfare profoundly shapes every aspect of your life, even if you never personally wield a sword or draw a bow in battle. The Mongol Empire's expansion, the very phenomenon that makes it so famous, is built on relentless military campaigns, and you, as a woman, bear a unique and often devastating burden from this constant state of conflict. It's a bit like living in a perpetual draft, where your loved ones are always on call. When the men of your Obog ride off to war, the domestic sphere transforms. The vibrant, bustling camp becomes quieter, the rhythms of daily life subtly altered by the absence of fathers, husbands, and sons. You were left with the immense responsibility of maintaining the household, protecting the children, and managing the herds. This isn't a temporary inconvenience. Campaigns can last for months, even years, leaving you in a state of prolonged uncertainty and anxiety. You learn to live with the gnawing worry of whether your loved ones will return, or if news will arrive of their demise on some distant battlefield. The direct impact of warfare can be brutal. Raids from rival tribes, even before the Empire's consolidation, are a constant threat. Your camp could be attacked, your herd stolen, your family members killed or captured. You learn to be vigilant, to listen for the distant thud of hooves, and to prepare for the worst. While women rarely participated in frontline combat, instances of women defending their camps with bows and arrows, or even joining the fight in desperate situations, are not unheard of. A mainstream historical fact is that while men constituted the fighting force, the logistical supports provided by women at home was crucial for sustaining the Mongol war machine. Without their tireless efforts, the armies could not have moved as swiftly or effectively. The spoils of war, while benefiting the empire, also bring significant changes to your life. New goods, slaves, and even women from conquered territories might be brought back to your Obog. This can introduce new dynamics, new challenges, and sometimes new conflicts within the camp. You might find yourself sharing resources, or even your gear with captives, a situation that often demands both pragmatism and a cautious approach to integration. Historians still argue whether the integration of conquered peoples was primarily coercive or if some assimilation occurred through mutual adaptation. The emotional toll of warfare is immeasurable. You witness the joy of triumphant returns, but also the sorrow of loss. You comfort widows and orphaned children, and you carry the quiet burden of your own grief. Yet, you cannot afford to wallow in despair. The herds still need tending, the children still need raising, and the ger still needs to be maintained. Your resilience, your ability to continue with daily life despite the emotional landscape of war, is a testament to the strength demanded of Mongol women. A quirky tidbit: some Mongol war camps were so large that they included entire cities on wheels, with women managing the immense logistical needs, almost like mobile supply bases. Imagine running a city while trying to avoid stray arrows. Ultimately, warfare, while seemingly a male domain, is a force that reverberates through every woman's life on the steppe. It dictates patterns of migration, shapes family structures, and constantly tests your endurance, making your quiet strength and ceaseless labor the very foundation upon which the empire's military might is built. When the men embark on long campaigns, the wartime economy of your obog falls squarely upon your shoulders. Far from being passive bystanders, you and the other women become the economic backbone of the community, ensuring that life continues. Resources are managed, and the absent warriors are indirectly supported. It's like running a multinational corporation with only half the staff. No internet, and the constant threat of rival companies showing up with swords. Your primary responsibility is the management of the herds. With fewer men to assist, you take on a greater share of the herding duties, moving the animals to new pastures, ensuring they are watered, and protecting them from predators or rustlers. The health and prosperity of these animals directly translate into the wealth and survival of your family. You are constantly assessing the condition of the pastures, making decisions about where to graze next, and calculating how much milk, meat, and wool can be harvested without jeopardizing the herd's long-term health. This requires an intimate knowledge of the land and a deep understanding of animal husbandry. Beyond the animals, you are the primary producers of essential goods. The felt coverings for the gears need constant repair or replacement, and you lead the communal effort of pounding wool into durable felt. Clothing must be made and mended, leather goods crafted, and tools repaired. You are also responsible for preparing and preserving food, drying meat into boards, churning milk into airag and arwell, ensuring a steady supply of non-perishable provisions for the months ahead. This sustained effort prevents your community from collapsing economically in the absence of its male labor force. One mainstream historical fact is that the efficiency of the Mongol wartime economy, largely managed by women, allowed the armies to remain in the field for extended periods without needing to return home for supplies. Trade, too, becomes a crucial part of your economic role. While men might have engaged in larger-scale caravanning, women often handle localized bartering. You might exchange excess animal products, felt, hides, cheese for goods not available on the steppe, such as grain, metal tools, or fine silks, brought by merchants who occasionally visit your camp. This ensures a flow of necessary goods into your household. Historians still argue about the precise extent of women's direct involvement in long-distance trade versus local exchange. The absence of men also means you take on greater decision-making responsibilities within the household, while the eldest male might still hold nominal authority. Practical day-to-day decisions about resource allocation, camp movements, and internal disputes often fall to the most capable women. This informal authority, born of necessity, highlights your leadership skills and pragmatic intelligence. A quirky tidbit: some accounts suggest that Mongol women were so adept at managing the household and economy that a returning warrior might find his property increased under his wife's management. Imagine coming home from war to find your wife has not only kept the lights on, but also expanded the family business. In essence, you become the silent, steadfast engine of the Mongol society during wartime. Your tireless labor, your astute management of resources, and your quiet resilience ensure that even as the empire expands through conquest, its foundations back home remain strong, ready to support the next wave of campaigns. Without your contribution to this complex wartime economy, the celebrated military machine of the Mongols simply could not have functioned. The harsh realities of warfare on the steppe mean that the threat of captivity and its devastating ramifications hangs over every woman's life like a storm cloud. Before the consolidation of the empire, when tribal skirmishes were rampant, and even during its expansion, being captured by a rival tribe or conquering army was a very real, terrifying possibility. It's a fate that instantly rips you from your known world, plunging you into a terrifying unknown. A profound loss of autonomy and identity. When a camp is raided, the primary goal of the attackers, beyond stealing livestock, is often to capture people. You might be seized during the chaos, torn from your family, and driven away with the stolen herds. The journey itself can be brutal, marked by forced marches, hunger, and fear. Your social status, your family connections, your very sense of self are stripped away, replaced by the grim reality of being a spoil of war. One mainstream historical fact is that throughout ancient and medieval history, captured women were often considered property, subject to the whims of their captors. The fate of a captive woman could vary dramatically, though rarely for the better. The most common outcome was forced servitude. You might be integrated into the captor's household as a domestic servant, tasked with endless chores, from cooking and cleaning to caring for children and managing animals. Your labor would be exploited, your days dictated by the commands of your new masters. You would likely be cut off from your original family and obog, forced to adapt to an alien environment and culture. Imagine suddenly being thrust into a stranger's house, with no way to communicate, and expected to do everything perfectly. Another grim possibility was sexual exploitation. Captive women were often taken as concubines or forced into sexual slavery. This was a particularly humiliating and vulnerable position, with virtually no rights or protections, as the saved information reminds us in ancient Greece, and similarly in many patriarchal societies, including the Mongol Empire. Male and female concubines were viewed as objects of sexual gratification, lacking the social standing and legal protections of free individuals or even recognized wives. They faced significant hardships, economic dependence, and vulnerability to mistreatment. This was not a recognized form of marriage and afforded no social status. The practice in the Mongol Empire was not identical to ancient Greece, but the underlying power dynamics and vulnerabilities for concubines were strikingly similar. They were without safeguards, isolated, and lacked recourse. In some rarer instances, particularly if you were from a high-status family, you might be married off to a captor as part of a strategic alliance, or to integrate your former tribe into the conquering one. While offering a degree of stability, such a marriage would still be without personal choice, and your position would always be precarious, dependent on the continued favor of your new husband and his family. Historians still argue about the frequency of these different outcomes, as detailed personal accounts from captives are scarce. A quirky tidbit: sometimes captives with particular skills, like expert felt makers or weavers, might find their abilities valued, which could grant them a slightly better, though still enslaved, existence. It's a small glimmer of human agency in an otherwise dehumanizing situation. However, for most, the experience of captivity was one of profound loss of freedom, loss of family, and often loss of hope. The memory of your former life would remain a haunting echo, a stark reminder of the fragile line between freedom and subjugation on the ever unpredictable steppe. Following the grim reality of capture, or sometimes as a consequence of internal tribal dynamics, you might find yourself navigating the profoundly difficult and precarious existence of life as a concubine. This position, whether male or female, was one of the lowest social standings, a perpetual state of vulnerability and exploitation far removed from the rights and respect afforded to wives. It's a bit like being a disposable extra in a historical drama, with very little control over your own script. As the saved information highlights, concubinage in ancient Greece was associated with exploitation and humiliation, and while the exact societal context differed, the core challenges for a male or female concubine in the Mongol Empire mirrored many of these hardships. You are not a recognized wife. Therefore, you lack the social status, legal protections, and customary rights that even a junior wife might possess. Your presence is primarily for sexual gratification and to potentially bear children for your patron. Any children you have, while acknowledged by the patron, might hold a lesser status than those born to his principal wife. This creates a deeply insecure existence, where your value is tied solely to your youth, beauty, or ability to produce offspring. Your daily life is characterized by economic dependence and a profound lack of autonomy. You are entirely at the mercy of your patron, relying on him for food, shelter, and basic necessities. This dependence severely limits your agency. You have little to no say in your own future, your movements, or your daily tasks. While you might perform domestic duties within the gear, similar to a servant, these are often secondary to your primary role as a sexual companion. There is no institutional or legal support for you. You are isolated, without recourse should you face mistreatment or abuse. It's a stark contrast to the communal support systems available to free women. You are viewed as an object, a possession, rather than an individual with inherent worth. This dehumanization is a constant underlying current in your interactions. There is no expectation of loyalty or familial bond beyond what is enforced by your patron. You cannot inherit property, and your presence in the household is contingent on your patron's whims. A mainstream historical fact is that concubinage was a widespread practice across many ancient and medieval societies, serving to increase a man's household and lineage, though often at great cost to the concubines themselves. A quirky tidbit: some very powerful men, even Genghis Khan himself, had numerous concubines. While this might suggest a life of luxury for the concubine, it often meant intense competition for the patron's favor and even greater insecurity, as she could be discarded or neglected at any moment. Imagine living in a constant state of audition, with your entire well-being hanging in the balance. Historians still argue whether some concubines, particularly those who bore many sons, might eventually gain a slightly more secure position. But this was a rare exception to a generally bleak existence. The life of a concubine is a stark reminder of the extreme vulnerabilities faced by women in a world where power dynamics were often brutally unbalanced. It highlights the vast difference in experience between free women who might command significant respect and autonomy within their sphere, and those trapped in a system that offered little more than exploitation and profound insecurity. Before the empire, your world was defined by the intricate dance of tribal loyalties and constant skirmishes. But then, a seismic shift begins. You witness the rise of the Mongol Empire, a phenomenon initiated by a man known first as Temujin, who would later become Genghis Khan. His ambition and strategic genius begin to reshape the very landscape of your existence, slowly transforming the fragmented, warring tribes into a unified, formidable force. It's like watching a chaotic, sprawling mess slowly coalesced into an unstoppable, disciplined machine, and you're right there, living through the transformation. Initially, this consolidation means more warfare, but now on a grander, more organized scale. You hear tales of Temujin's early campaigns, his fierce battles against rival clans like the Merkits and the Tatars. For your Obog, this might mean being absorbed into his growing confederation, either by force or by strategic alliance. If your tribe resists, you might face the brutal consequences of defeat, destruction, subjugation, or even annihilation. If your tribe submits, you become part of a larger, more powerful entity, gaining a degree of security under his banner that was previously unimaginable. This is a mainstream historical fact. Genghis Khan's initial strategy involved ruthlessly unifying the disparate Mongol and Turkic tribes of the steppe. As Temujin's power grows, so does the reach of his authority. He establishes a system of loyalty based on merit rather than solely on traditional aristocratic lineage, a revolutionary concept for the time. This means that a skilled warrior or a loyal follower from a humble background could rise through the ranks. And this shift subtly impacts your own life. While you might not be directly involved in military leadership, the overall stability and burgeoning wealth that comes with consolidation trickle down to your household. Less inter-tribal raiding, for example, means greater safety for your herds and family, allowing you to focus more on productive labor rather than constant vigilance. The establishment of a centralized leadership also brings a nascent sense of law and order to the chaotic steppe. Genghis Khan begins to impose universal laws and regulations, known later as the Yasa, designed to reduce internal strife and ensure discipline. This system, though harsh, aims to create a more predictable environment where disputes are settled by decree rather than endless blood feuds. For women, this might mean a new, albeit limited, form of protection against arbitrary violence or capture by fellow Mongols. A quirky tidbit, Genghis Khan was known to be remarkably pragmatic, even adopting ideas and people from conquered territories if he saw their value. This extended to some legal concepts. Historians still argue whether Genghis Khan's unification was driven more by personal ambition or a genuine desire to bring peace and order to the steppe. Regardless of his motivations, the impact on your daily life is tangible. You witness the shift from a precarious, tribal existence to one within a burgeoning empire. Your family's prosperity becomes increasingly tied to the success of this grand project. The small, familiar world of your Obog slowly expands to encompass a vast, unified domain, changing the scope of your reality forever. With the rise of Genghis Khan and the consolidation of the empire comes the implementation of the Yasa Code, a set of laws and decrees that profoundly impacts every aspect of Mongol society, including the daily lives of women. This wasn't just a collection of rules. It was a foundational legal framework designed to govern a vast, diverse population, bringing a degree of order to a previously chaotic world. For you, The yasa provides both an unprecedented layer of protection and, simultaneously, clear constraints on your actions and societal role. It's like getting a new operating manual for life, complete with both benefits and limitations. One of the most significant protections offered by the yasa, a mainstream historical fact, was its strict prohibition against kidnapping or enslaving fellow Mongols. This brought a level of internal security that had been utterly absent during the tribal skirmishes. For women, this meant a significant reduction in the constant fear of being abducted by rival tribes, a fear that had overshadowed your earlier life. It also strictly punished theft and looting within the empire, further stabilizing the nomadic economy and protecting your family's precious herds. Imagine the relief of not having to constantly guard your livestock from your neighbors. However, the yasa also codified and reinforced traditional gender roles. While it offered protection, it did not necessarily elevate women's legal status to full equality with men. For instance, polygamy was permitted for men, and women continued to be viewed, largely in terms of their familial roles, as daughters, wives, and mothers. Decisions regarding marriage, property, and legal disputes still largely remained within the patriarchal structure of the family and obug, though now with the ultimate authority of the Kant's law overseeing it. Historians still argue whether the yasa was truly progressive for its time regarding women, or simply pragmatic in maintaining social order. The yasa also regulated public behavior and social conduct. For instance, laws promoting hospitality and mutual aid were enforced, making life safer for travelers, including women, moving between camps. Drunkenness, though common, was theoretically discouraged in excess, and adultery was strictly punished, for both men and women, often with severe penalties. This level of social control, while perhaps stifling to modern sensibilities, contributed to the disciplined and efficient functioning of the empire. A quirky tidbit: some interpretations of the yasa suggested that it was forbidden to drown or bathe in rivers during certain periods, possibly for spiritual reasons or to preserve water purity, which would certainly impact your daily routines. Your life under the yasa, while still demanding, becomes more predictable. Disputes that once led to bloody feuds can now be brought before local authorities or even higher courts, offering a semblance of justice. This legal framework, though not always perfectly enforced in every corner of the vast empire, represented a crucial step towards state building and civilization from a nomadic perspective. It meant that your contribution to the family and economy was more secure, and your personal safety, at least from internal threats, was significantly improved. It allowed for a greater focus on prosperity and stability, rather than constant defense, profoundly altering the rhythm of your days. As the Mongol Empire consolidates and expands, a new class of women emerges with unparalleled influence. The women of the imperial family. You might not be one of them, but their lives, their political machinations, and their extraordinary power ripple through the entire empire, touching even the lives of ordinary women on the distant steppes. These are not merely wives or mothers in the traditional sense. They are shrewd strategists, regents, and formidable politicians in their own right. It's like watching a royal soap opera unfold on a global scale, but with real-world consequences. And significantly more horses. The Khans, starting with Genghis, often had multiple wives and numerous concubines, but there was a clear hierarchy. The great wives, particularly those of the first-rank Khans, held immense prestige and influence. Their lineage was crucial, as their sons were often contenders for the imperial throne. These women lived in far greater luxury than you, with elaborate gairs, retinues of servants, and access to resources from across the vast empire. Yet their lives were also filled with intense political intrigue, as they maneuvered to ensure their sons or preferred candidates ascended to power. This is a mainstream historical fact. The mothers of potential khans often played a pivotal role in the succession struggles after the death of a great khan. Perhaps the most famous example of such power is Sorgatani Beki, mother of Mungay, Kublai, Hulagu, and Arik Bekai, though never a ruling empress herself. Her intelligence, administrative acumen, and strategic alliances were legendary. She was a Nestorian Christian, a quirky tidbit, and was known for her shrewd management of her vast territories and her sons' education, grooming them for future leadership. She meticulously cultivated relationships with powerful figures and foreign dignitaries, effectively running a sophisticated political network from behind the scenes. Historians still argue whether her influence was unique or if other women of the imperial family wielded similar, albeit less documented, power. The great wives often traveled with the khans, even on military campaigns, managing the imperial camp, which could sometimes be a city of guards. They were custodians of the family's wealth and played a vital role in diplomatic relations, sometimes receiving foreign envoys and presiding over councils. Their presence provided a crucial element of stability and continuity in a nomadic court constantly on the move. They were often educated, sometimes literate, and keenly aware of the political currents flowing through the empire. While their power was considerable, it was also dependent on their relationship with the reigning khan and the strength of their sons. Should their sons fail to secure power, their own influence could wane or even vanish. Yet, their ability to navigate this treacherous political landscape, to command respect from powerful generals and foreign rulers, speaks volumes about their formidable intelligence and resilience. For you, an ordinary woman, these imperial women represent the pinnacle of female power within the Mongol system, a distant reflection of the strength and resourcefulness required of all women, albeit on a far grander, more luxurious, and incredibly dangerous stage. Sometimes, the power of women in the Mongol Empire transcended even the influence of imperial wives, as certain figures rose to become empresses and regents, ruling in their own right, even if temporarily. These were extraordinary women who stepped into leadership roles during times of crisis or transition, wielding immense political and military authority. It's like the world's most powerful CEO suddenly going on sabbatical, and the most capable woman in the boardroom taking the reins. Only the boardroom is an entire empire. The most prominent example of such a powerful woman is Turijin Khotun, the first woman to rule the Mongol Empire after the death of her husband Ogedei Khan Genghis Khan's son. For 5 years, from 1241 to 1246, she served as regent, effectively governing the vast Mongol domains. This was a period of intense political maneuvering and succession struggles, and Turijin navigated it with remarkable cunning and determination. She skillfully consolidated power, appointed her own allies to key positions, and managed the immense administrative apparatus of the empire. This is a mainstream historical fact. Turijin's regency was a pivotal period, demonstrating a woman's capacity to lead the entire empire. Turijin's primary goal was to secure the succession for her son, Guyuk, and she pursued this with unwavering focus, even overriding the preferences of some of the great generals and princes. She convened the Kurultai, the Great Assembly, that eventually elected Guyuk as the next great Khan, demonstrating her political mastery. Her rule wasn't without controversy. She reversed some of Ogeday's policies and was sometimes criticized for corruption. However, her ability to maintain control over such a sprawling and often fractious empire for half a decade is a testament to her formidable will and political acumen. Another powerful figure was Sorgatani Beki, who, as you remember, was never a regent of the entire empire, but was a de facto ruler of her own territories within the empire, raising 4 sons who would all become significant rulers, Monkey and Kublai as great Khans, Hulagu as Ilkhan of Persia, and Arik Bok as a claimant to the throne. Her strategic alliances, wise investments, and administrative genius laid the groundwork for her son's eventual success. A quirky tidbit about her is her notable patronage of various religions, including Nestorian Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, which not only showed her tolerance but also likely served political purposes by securing diverse loyalties. These women operated in a patriarchal system, yet they found ways to exert their authority, often leveraging their status as mothers of potential Khans or acting as placeholders during Their power was often derived from their marital and maternal connections, but their ability to retain and wield that power was entirely their own. Historians still argue about the extent to which these regencies set precedents for future female leadership or were seen as temporary necessities. For you, an ordinary woman, these figures might seem like distant, almost legendary beings, yet their very existence speaks to the potential for female leadership and influence within the Mongol system, a system often perceived as solely male-dominated. They prove that even in a warrior culture, intelligence, political savvy, and sheer force of will could elevate women to the very pinnacle of power, shaping the destiny of millions. As the Mongol Empire stretched its vast tentacles across Eurasia, connecting east and west as never before, you begin to see subtle but significant changes brought about by the flourishing trade and Silk Road influence. No longer is your world confined solely to the steppe. Goods, ideas, and people from distant lands begin to filter into your life, offering new experiences and, for some women, even new economic opportunities. It's like your quiet, rural town suddenly became a major international airport with all sorts of interesting cargo and passengers passing through. The Pax Mongolica, the period of relative peace and stability enforced across the vast Mongol domains, made the ancient Silk Road routes safer and more efficient than they had ever been. Caravans laden with precious silks, spices, ceramics, and even new technologies traveled regularly between China, Persia, Central Asia, and Europe. While men primarily engaged in long-distance merchant ventures, women benefited from and contributed to the increased flow of goods at a local level. You might encounter foreign merchants passing through your camp, offering goods that were once unimaginable, intricately patterned fabrics, new tools, or exotic foodstuffs. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire significantly revitalized and protected the Silk Road, leading to an unprecedented era of trade. For women in imperial households, the impact of trade was even more profound. Empresses and noblewomen gained access to the finest silks, jewels, and luxury items from across the empire and beyond. They might employ skilled artisans, brought from conquered lands, to create elaborate clothing, furniture, or ornaments, reflecting a blend of Mongol and foreign aesthetics. This patronage contributed to the economic vitality of specific crafts and regions. Historians still argue whether the trade primarily benefited the elite or if some of its advantages trickled down significantly to the common people. even for ordinary women like you. The indirect benefits were tangible. Better tools, though perhaps still rare, could make daily tasks like food preparation or hide processing slightly more efficient. New ideas about animal husbandry or crafting techniques might be exchanged through word of mouth with passing travelers, or through observation of new arrivals in the camps. A quirky tidbit. Some accounts mention Mongol women wearing elaborate headdresses adorned with pearls and precious stones, which were undoubtedly sourced through these extensive trade networks, a far cry from the simple bone ornaments of earlier times. Moreover, the increased movement of people facilitated by trade meant a greater chance of diverse interactions. You might encounter women from different cultures, Chinese, Persian, Central Asian, Turkic, who had been brought into the Mongol realm through marriage, capture, or voluntary migration. While linguistic barriers might exist, there was an opportunity for informal cultural exchange, learning new recipes, weaving patterns, or even snippets of different languages. This burgeoning cosmopolitanism, a direct result of the empire's vast reach, slowly began to broaden your horizons beyond the immediate confines of your obog. Your world, which once felt so singular and self-contained, now had threads connecting it to distant, vibrant civilizations. The opening of the Silk Road and the vast reach of the Mongol Empire didn't just bring goods, they facilitated an unprecedented level of cultural exchange and adoption. Your world, once relatively insular, becomes a vibrant melting pot of ideas, technologies, and customs, subtly but significantly altering the fabric of Mongol society and, by extension, your daily life. It's like living in a time when the internet was just invented, and suddenly, you have access to everyone's creative projects and weird hobbies. From the East, technologies and administrative practices flowed in. You might see new forms of writing, brought by Yuga scribes who became integral to the Mongol administration, or perhaps encounter Chinese medical techniques and herbal remedies, while direct application in your nomadic gear might be limited. The broader societal adoption of these innovations eventually benefits everyone. Imagine a new, more efficient way to process grain, even if you're only eating a little bit of it. That innovation still helps support the empire that sustains you. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Mongols were highly pragmatic and readily adopted useful technologies and administrative systems from conquered civilizations from the west and south. Particularly from Persia and the Islamic world came sophisticated advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and architecture. While these grand intellectual pursuits might seem distant from your daily chores, the indirect influence is felt. For instance, new agricultural techniques learned from settled peoples could lead to better harvests in the empire's sedentary regions, contributing to overall stability and food security. Or perhaps new weaving patterns or dyeing techniques arrive, influencing the clothing you wear or the felt you make. Historians still argue about the precise channels through which these cultural diffusions occurred and their immediate impact on nomadic life. Your daily life might incorporate subtle new elements. Perhaps a new type of spice finds its way into your stew, or a different method for curing meat is adopted. You might encounter new stories and legends, shared by travelers from distant lands, enriching the oral traditions of your Oba. Even the design of everyday objects might subtly change, incorporating motifs or functional improvements from foreign cultures. A quirky tidbit: some Mongol gears, especially those of the nobility, began to incorporate more elaborate interior decorations like patterned silks and carved furniture, inspired by the opulence of Persian and Chinese courts. a stark contrast to the humble, purely functional interiors of earlier generations. The presence of diverse people within the empire also fosters cultural adoption, as families are integrated, whether through marriage or other means. They bring their own traditions, recipes, and beliefs. While Mongol culture largely retained its distinct nomadic character, it was not impermeable. You might observe a new form of music, a different way of preparing a feast, or even a foreign spiritual practice coexisting alongside your traditional ways. This dynamic interchange was a hallmark of the Mongol Empire, making it a truly cosmopolitan entity despite its nomadic roots. This vast cultural synthesis, enabled by the empire's reach and its pragmatic openness, continually reshaped the world around you, ensuring that life on the steppe was never truly static. One of the most remarkable policies of the Mongol Empire, especially considering the era, was its widespread religious tolerance. For you, living within this vast domain, this meant that while your traditional Tengarist and shamanistic beliefs remained central, you would increasingly encounter individuals and communities practicing a diverse array of faiths. The imperial policy was largely pragmatic. As long as people were loyal and paid their taxes, their personal spiritual beliefs were generally respected and protected. It's like a cosmic live and let live policy enacted on an unprecedented scale. As the empire expanded, it incorporated regions with deeply entrenched religions, Buddhism in Tibet and parts of China, Nestorian Christianity in Central Asia and parts of Persia, Islam across the Middle East and Central Asia, and various forms of Judaism. The Khans, though often maintaining their traditional Mongol spiritual practices, were famously open to learning about other faiths, and even invited religious leaders of all stripes to their courts for discussions. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire's religious tolerance was exceptional for its time, contrasting sharply with the religious persecutions common in many other empires. For you, this tolerance manifests in tangible ways. You might see a Buddhist monk in his robes, a Christian priest with his cross, or a Muslim trader pausing for prayer on the steppe. Your camp might be visited by people from different religious backgrounds, and while you might not understand their rituals, you learn to coexist with them. You observe how they structure their lives around their beliefs, offering a broader perspective on the human relationship with the divine. Historians still argue whether this tolerance stemmed from a genuine philosophical openness or was primarily a practical strategy to avoid internal dissent and better govern diverse populations. Women of different faiths within the empire experienced varying degrees of impact from this policy. For Nestorian Christian women in Central Asia, it might mean the freedom to practice their religion openly and maintain their communities. For Muslim women in conquered cities, it might mean the continuation of their religious practices under Mongol rule, albeit within a new political order. For Buddhist women in China, it meant their monasteries and temples were largely left undisturbed. This religious freedom, while not granting universal equality in all aspects of life, certainly protected a fundamental right that was often denied elsewhere. A quirky tidbit: some of the great Khan's wives and mothers, like Sorgatoni Beki, who was Nestorian, Christian, or Chabi Kublai Khan's favorite wife, who was a patron of Buddhism, exerted significant influence and patronage over their respective religions. This often led to the building of new churches, mosques, and temples, or the support of religious scholars and artists, further embedding religious diversity within the imperial fabric. Imagine your equivalent of the First Lady openly championing a religion different from the president's. This policy of religious tolerance created a surprisingly vibrant, albeit complex, spiritual landscape across the Mongol Empire. For you, it meant an expanded worldview, an understanding that many paths could lead to the divine, and a generally peaceful coexistence with those whose beliefs differed from your own. A testament to the empire's pragmatic approach to governing a truly global domain. As the Mongol armies swept across vast swaths of land, your life, even on the steppe, was inevitably shaped by the fates of the women in conquered lands. The empire was not just built on nomadic expansion. It was sustained by the wealth and resources of settled, sophisticated societies. The integration of these diverse populations, and particularly their women, into the Mongol system presented a complex tapestry of subjugation, adaptation, and sometimes even integration. It's like your family expanded overnight to include millions of new, very different relatives, some willingly, some definitely not. When a city or region was conquered, the immediate impact on its female inhabitants could be devastating. Looting, violence, and the enslavement of women were tragically common occurrences in the initial aftermath of a siege. Many women would be taken as war captives, subjected to the brutal realities you've already considered, forced into servitude or concubinage within the Mongol households. This represents the harshest end of the spectrum, a complete loss of freedom and identity. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Mongol conquests, while establishing a vast empire, were often characterized by extreme brutality towards the conquered populations, particularly in the initial stages. However, the Mongol approach often shifted from initial destruction to a more pragmatic policy of integration once control was established. For many women in conquered territories, especially in long-settled regions like China, Persia, or Central Asia, this meant adapting to a new political overlord rather than a complete overhaul of their daily lives. They would continue to live in their cities or villages, practice their trades, and maintain their family structures, albeit under Mongol administration and subject to Mongol taxation. Their experiences would vary wildly depending on their social class, their skills, and the specific circumstances of their region's conquest. For women of the urban elite, the transition could be particularly complex. Some might be forcibly married into Mongol noble families to cement alliances, becoming wives or concubines in the imperial or aristocratic gers, where they would bring their own cultural traditions and often exert influence through their sophisticated backgrounds. Others might find their families stripped of power or wealth, a quirky tidbit. Some captive women from skilled families, like weavers or artisans, were highly valued and relocated to contribute their expertise to the Mongol economy, sometimes even establishing new workshops under imperial patronage. It's a strange mix of forced migration and skill acquisition. Conversely, some women from conquered lands, particularly those of Turkic or Central Asian nomadic backgrounds, found it easier to assimilate into the Mongol nomadic lifestyle, given their shared heritage of steppe traditions. They might marry into Mongol families and adopt the nomadic way of life, contributing their own unique cultural elements to the broader Mongol tapestry. Historians still argue about the long-term impact of Mongol rule on the gender roles and social status of women in the various conquered societies. As evidence is often fragmented and region-specific, ultimately, the fate of women in conquered lands under the Mongol Empire was a spectrum of experiences. From brutal subjugation and forced assimilation to grudging coexistence and consent in some cases, even a degree of integration and influence. Your own life on the steppe, while seemingly insulated, was inextricably linked to these transformations, as the flow of people, wealth, and ideas from these new territories constantly reshaped the empire you were a part of. Amidst the relentless demands of daily life and the grand sweep of empire, human beings always find ways to express their inner worlds, and the Mongol Empire was no exception. While not as extensively documented as their military prowess, art, literature, and song were integral to Mongol culture. And while men often dominated public performances, women played significant, albeit often quieter, roles in these domains. It's like living in a world without Netflix, so everyone just makes their own entertainment, and you're often the unsung producer. Oral tradition was paramount in Mongol society, a mainstream historical fact given their nomadic lifestyle, and lack of a widespread written script for much of their early history. Stories, epics, legends, and poems were passed down through generations by word of mouth. You would hear tales of heroic warriors, cunning leaders, and the origins of your obog around the evening fire. Women were often the primary custodians of these stories within the family, especially for the children, weaving narratives that taught history, morality, and cultural values. Imagine being the human equivalent of an audiobook, ensuring the family history doesn't get lost in translation or in the next big move. Song was a universal form of expression. Mongols sang about their horses, the vast steppe, their ancestors, battles, and love. While men might have sung epic ballads or war chants, women often sang lullabies to their children, work songs while processing felt or milking animals, and mournful dirges for the deceased. These songs were deeply personal yet culturally resonant, reflecting the joys and sorrows of nomadic life. The unique vocal technique of throat-singing kume, while primarily associated with men, might have had feminine variants or influence in different regional styles. Historians still argue about the precise stylistic differences in male and female vocal traditions. In terms of art, much of it was practical and portable, reflecting the nomadic lifestyle. This included intricate patterns on felt rugs, leatherwork, and clothing, while some of the more elaborate courtly arts involved male artisans. Women were the primary creators of the everyday artistry found in the gear. You might embroider patterns on your deal, with decorative elements into your storage bags, or adorn your horse's tack with colorful details. These weren't considered fine art in the Western sense, but they were expressions of beauty and cultural identity integral to daily life. A quirky tidbit: some Mongol saddles were incredibly ornate, featuring intricate metalwork and decorative leather, showcasing a blend of practicality and artistry. Literature, beyond oral epics, began to develop with the adoption of a written script, often based on Uighur script, during the empire's expansion. While male scholars and chroniclers were responsible for official histories like the secret history of the Mongols, women in educated imperial households might have engaged with written texts, perhaps reading poetry or historical accounts. This was a privilege of the elite, but it shows the expanding scope of cultural engagement facilitated by the empire. Ultimately, your participation in art, literature, and song was woven into the fabric of your daily existence, a quiet yet constant expression of your heritage and humanity. These cultural practices provided comfort, entertainment, and a vital link to your past and future, ensuring that the spirit of the steppe lived on even amidst the greatest empire the world had ever seen. In a society where formal medicine, as we know it, was non-existent, the roles of healers and shamans were vitally important. And for women in the Mongol Empire, these positions offered avenues to considerable respect and power. You might not have been a direct practitioner, but your life would have been touched by their wisdom, their rituals, and their deep connection to both the physical and spiritual realms. It's like having the combined expertise of a doctor, a therapist, and a spiritual guide, all rolled into one nomadic package. Healers, often older women or those with specific knowledge passed down through generations, possessed a vast understanding of herbal remedies and traditional medical practices. They would diagnose illnesses based on symptoms, examine pulses, and prescribe treatments using plants gathered from the steppe, animal products, or even minerals. They understood basic wound care, setting bones, and assisting in childbirth. This knowledge was empirical, accumulated over centuries of observation and trial and error, and was absolutely essential for survival in a world without antibiotics or modern surgical techniques. This is a mainstream historical fact. Traditional medicine, often centered around herbal remedies and practical treatments, was the primary form of healthcare in nomadic societies. Shamans, on the other hand, held spiritual authority, acting as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds. While both men and women could be shamans, female shamans, known as udigan, were particularly revered and held significant influence. They were believed to possess the ability to communicate with Tengri, the sky god, ancestral spirits, and nature. Spirits seeking guidance, interpreting omens, and performing rituals for healing or protection. You might witness a shamanic ceremony, a powerful and mesmerizing event involving drumming, chanting, and ecstatic trance, designed to restore balance or seek answers to profound questions. Historians still argue whether female shamans held more spiritual authority in certain tribal contexts. Compared to male shamans, the power of shamans wasn't limited to spiritual matters. They often offered practical advice on political decisions, military campaigns, or even mundane issues like choosing the best pastures. Their pronouncements carried immense weight, listened to even by the khans themselves. For a woman to hold such a position meant she commanded respect from all levels of society, an authority derived not from lineage or marriage, but from her perceived connection to the divine. A quirky tidbit: some accounts describe female shamans wearing elaborate ritual attire, including masks and feathered headdresses, during their ceremonies. Adding to the mystique of their practices, your interaction with these healers and shamans would be frequent. If a child fell ill, if your herd was struck by disease, or if a difficult decision needed to be made, these figures would be consulted. Their presence offered comfort, hope, and a tangible connection to forces beyond everyday comprehension. They were not just individuals. They were pillars of the community, indispensable for both physical and spiritual well-being. Their knowledge and power underscore the diverse ways women contributed to Mongol society, extending far beyond the domestic sphere and into the realms of health, spirituality, and even governance. Just as the Mongol Empire rose with astonishing speed, it also began its slow, inevitable decline. A process that profoundly impacted the lives of women across its vast, fragmented domains. The once unified force that brought stability and trade began to unravel, leading to new challenges and varied fates for women in different regions. It's like watching a perfectly synchronized orchestra slowly fall into discord, with each section playing its own tune, and sometimes those tunes clash rather loudly. The decline wasn't a single event, but a gradual process, marked by internal strife, succession crises, and the eventual fracturing of the empire into separate independent Khanates, the Golden Horde, the Ilkhanate, the Chagatai Khanate, and the Yuan dynasty in China. This is a mainstream historical fact. The vast Mongol Empire ultimately broke into several distinct successor states, losing its centralized authority. For you, this meant that the universal laws and protections of the Pax Mongolica began to weaken, replaced by regional rulers with their own agendas and policies. In regions like China, where the Yuan dynasty faced increasing internal rebellion and natural disasters, women might experience the instability directly through economic hardship, famine, or renewed warfare. Life became more precarious, and the previously established trade routes might be disrupted, limiting access to goods and resources. For women in these areas, the decline often meant a return to older societal norms, sometimes more restrictive than those under the earlier Mongol rule, as indigenous cultures reasserted themselves. In the Western Khanates, such as the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe and Russia, and the Ilkhanate in Persia, the situation for women also varied. While some Mongol women of noble birth might continue to wield political influence within their respective Khanates, the general population of women, both Mongol and non-Mongol, would face the consequences of shifting alliances, internal conflicts, and eventual dissolution. The focus would often revert to local power struggles, potentially increasing the vulnerability of ordinary women to raids or exploitation. Historians still argue about the precise reasons for the decline of each Khanate, with factors like internal rivalries, economic mismanagement, and cultural assimilation all playing a part. A quirky tidbit: some women in the successor Khanates, particularly in the Golden Horde, are recorded as participating in hunting expeditions and equestrian sports well into the later periods, demonstrating the enduring legacy of nomadic traditions for women even as the political landscape shifted. It was a reminder that some aspects of the Mongol way of life were incredibly persistent, even when the empire itself was crumbling. For you, living through the decline meant adapting once again to a less predictable world. The vast unity that had once offered a degree of security now dissolved, potentially exposing your obog to renewed tribal conflicts or the pressures of consolidating regional powers. While the glory days of unified empire might be fading, the resilience and adaptability ingrained in you by generations of nomadic life remained, preparing you to navigate whatever new challenges the fracturing world might present. The vast empire, once a source of both awe and terror, slowly receded, leaving behind a complex legacy that would continue to shape the lives of women in Central Asia and beyond for centuries to come. Even as the grand unified empire faded into history, the legacy of Mongol women and their unique way of life continued to exert an enduring influence on subsequent Central Asian and East Asian societies. The echoes of your nomadic existence, the skills you honed, and the roles you fulfilled did not vanish with the collapse of the imperial structure. Rather, they subtly shaped the cultures that followed. It's like a powerful river changing course, but still leaving behind fertile deposits that nourished the land for generations in Central Asia, particularly among the various Turkic and Mongol groups who remained nomadic or semi-nomadic. The traditional roles and independent spirit of women persisted. The ger continued to be the central dwelling, and women remained vital to its construction and maintenance. Their expertise in animal husbandry, felt making, and dairy processing continued to be indispensable. The strong, equestrian female figure, capable of managing a household and contributing significantly to the economy, remained an ideal. This is a mainstream historical fact. Many nomadic cultures in Central Asia continued to share strong cultural similarities with the Mongols long after the empire's decline, including aspects of women's roles, even in settled societies, like those in China after the fall of the Yuan dynasty. Some subtle influences remained. While Chinese culture largely reverted to its traditional patriarchal norms, the period of Mongol rule may have introduced or reinforced certain practical skills or a pragmatic outlook that women might have adapted. For instance, the greater emphasis on horse riding and certain forms of animal management, even for non-elite women, could be seen as an indirect legacy. Historians still argue about the extent to which Mongol practices truly permeated Chinese society on a deeper, lasting level versus remaining a superficial overlay. The strategic marriages of Mongol princesses into various dynasties, even after the decline of the main empire, also continued to carry Mongol influence. These women often brought with them not just their retinues and wealth, but also aspects of their culture, administrative practices, and even religious affiliations, subtly shaping the courts they joined. A quirky tidbit, the distinctive deal Mongol robe influenced the fashion of several later dynasties and nomadic groups, with its practical, wraparound design proving enduringly popular and adaptable. Imagine your everyday work clothes becoming a fashion statement centuries later. Furthermore, the Mongol emphasis on merit and practicality, as seen in the Yasa Code, although inconsistently applied, may have had a lingering philosophical impact. In certain regions, encouraging a degree of pragmatism in governance that, by extension, could sometimes create more opportunities or greater stability for women. The memory of powerful Mongol empresses and regents, though often demonized by subsequent dynastic histories, still existed as a testament to female leadership. Ultimately, the women of the Mongol Empire left an indelible mark, not just on their own time, but on the subsequent trajectory of Central Asian and beyond. Their resilience, their practical skills, and their quiet strength became part of the cultural DNA, a persistent reminder of the crucial, multifaceted roles women played in shaping one of history's most formidable empires. Even today, centuries after the Mongol Empire's glory faded, you can still find modern echoes of nomadic life, particularly in the heartlands of Mongolia and other Central Asian countries. Many aspects of the traditional female experience, the skills you honed, and the rhythm of your days are not relegated to history books, but continue to thrive, adapted for a new century. It's like discovering that the ancient practices you mastered are still perfectly relevant, even with smartphones and satellites overhead. If you were to visit modern-day Mongolia, you would immediately recognize the familiar sight of the gate. Still, the primary dwelling for a significant portion of the population, especially in rural areas, and within these gars, you would see women performing many of the same tasks you undertook, setting up and dismantling the felt tents, processing milk into traditional dairy products like ROL and airag, and preparing hearty, meat-based meals over a central stove. The continuity of these domestic arts is a mainstream historical fact, demonstrating the enduring efficiency and cultural significance of the traditional nomadic lifestyle. The connection to animals also remains profound. While fewer people are purely nomadic, animal husbandry is still central to the economy and culture. Women continue to play a crucial role in caring for the herds, especially the smaller animals, and processing their products into food and materials. You'd see them adeptly milking mares and yaks, shearing sheep, and transforming raw wool into felt for crafts or insulation. The skills you practiced daily are still alive, passed down through generations, albeit sometimes with the aid of modern tools like motorized vehicles for herding or rudimentary processing machines. Even clothing bears a striking resemblance. The deel remains the national dress of Mongolia, worn by both men and women, while modern versions incorporate new fabrics and designs. The fundamental cut and practicality of the garment are direct descendants of what you wore. Women still adorn their hair with braids and sometimes incorporate traditional silver ornaments, linking modern aesthetics to ancient traditions. A quirky tidbit: in modern Mongolia, even in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, you can find gers mixed in with apartment buildings, creating a fascinating blend of ancient and contemporary living, and often it's the women who maintain the traditional aspects of the ger lifestyle amidst urbanity. While modern technology has undeniably impacted daily life, solar panels, power lights in gers, cell phones connect distant families, and motorbikes sometimes replace horses for herding, the core values and rhythm of nomadic female life persist. The strength, resourcefulness, and adaptability you cultivated remain essential traits for women navigating life in these regions. Historians still argue about the extent to which these modern continuities are a conscious preservation of heritage or simply the most practical way of life in challenging environments. For you, looking forward from your ancient steppe life, seeing these echoes would be a powerful affirmation. It would demonstrate that the invaluable skills you mastered, the wisdom you embodied, and the spirit of resilience you lived by were not just for your time, but held a timeless quality, ensuring that the legacy of Mongol women would continue to resonate across the centuries. Despite the wealth of historical information about the Mongol Empire, particularly its military and political achievements, there remain significant historical gaps and silences when it comes to fully understanding the lives of women. Reconstructing your daily existence, your thoughts, and your personal experiences is a constant challenge for historians, largely due to the nature of the surviving sources. It's like trying to piece together a massive puzzle when half the pieces are missing, and the other half are upside down. Most of the primary sources from the Mongol period were written by men, often official chroniclers, foreign observers like European missionaries or Persian historians, or the Khans themselves. These sources naturally prioritize male achievements, battles, conquests, diplomatic missions, and the politics of succession. Women, when they are mentioned, are often in relation to these male spheres as mothers of Khans, as regents, or as subjects of marriage alliances. Their personal lives, their daily struggles, their emotional landscapes, and their unique contributions are largely absent or relegated to footnotes. This is a mainstream historical fact. Historical records, particularly from pre-modern societies, often suffer from a male-centric bias, marginalizing the experiences of women. This scarcity of direct female voices means that historians must often read between the lines, inferring women's lives from archaeological evidence, ethnographic studies of contemporary nomadic cultures, and careful interpretation of the limited textual references. For instance, the size and layout of gers can tell us about family structures and labor divisions, even if no woman explicitly wrote about her daily chores. The contents of graves might reveal aspects of women's adornment or spiritual beliefs. Historians still argue about the ethical implications of using modern ethnographic data to interpret ancient societies, given the potential for anachronism. Furthermore, nomadic societies, by their very nature, leave fewer permanent written records than sedentary civilizations. Their histories were primarily oral, passed down through generations, making the task of historical reconstruction even more challenging. What few written records exist from the Mongols themselves, like the secret history of the Mongols, primarily focus on the imperial lineage and great events. A quirky tidbit: some of the richest insights into Mongol women come from the astonished accounts of foreign travelers who recorded customs that seemed unusual or remarkable to their own cultures, often inadvertently shedding light on female roles. Imagine a modern tourist marveling at something you consider completely mundane. The silence in the archives does not mean women were unimportant or passive. On the contrary, it underscores the immense challenges faced by those trying to paint a complete picture of history. It forces historians to be creative and analytical, drawing on various disciplines to reconstruct the rich tapestry of women's lives. For you, living in that time, your life was full, rich with purpose, and profoundly impactful, even if future generations would struggle to find your specific voice in the historical record. The gaps serve as a powerful reminder that history is not just about what was written down, but about the countless lived experiences that shape the past, many of which remain stubbornly unrecorded. Having journeyed through the intricate tapestry of your life as a woman in the Mongol Empire, it's time to take a moment for a woman's perspective, a recap. This isn't just a summary of facts, but a distillation of the overarching themes that defined your existence: resilience, adaptability, and quiet power. You were not a passive figure in the shadows of great men. You were the steady, indispensable force that grounded an empire of motion. Your resilience was forged from childhood, from learning to ride a horse almost before you could walk, to enduring the harsh steppe winters, to facing the constant threat of raiding or the profound absence of men gone to war. Your life demanded an unyielding strength of spirit and body. You bore children in makeshift gers, tended to the sick with traditional knowledge, and carried on with the myriad tasks of daily survival, no matter the circumstances. Your ability to bounce back from hardship, to keep moving forward despite adversity, was not just a personal trait, but a fundamental requirement for the survival of your obog. It's like being a perpetual motion machine, powered by sheer grit and determination. Your adaptability was equally remarkable. You lived in a world of constant change, seasonal migrations, shifting political landscapes, the influx of new cultures and technologies brought by the empire's expansion. You learned to make a home wherever your animals grazed, to integrate new knowledge into your traditional practices, and to navigate interactions with diverse peoples, whether dealing with a new policy from the distant Khan or a sudden change in climate. You adapted your skills and your mindset, ensuring the continued well-being of your family. This flexibility was key to thriving in a nomadic, ever-evolving world. A mainstream historical fact is that the Mongol success was partly due to their adaptability, a trait deeply embedded in their nomadic lifestyle and exemplified by their women. And then there was your quiet power. Though rarely wielding overt political authority in the same way as men, your influence was profound and pervasive. You were the manager of the domestic economy, ensuring food security, crafting essential goods, and raising the next generation of Mongols. Your role in animal husbandry was indispensable, making you a direct contributor to the wealth of your family. You were the custodian of cultural traditions, passing down stories, songs, and spiritual beliefs. Women like Trajin and Sorgatani Baki demonstrated that in moments of crisis, female leadership could emerge and effectively govern an empire. This silent, foundational power, rooted in your indispensable labor and wisdom, was the bedrock upon which the entire nomadic society rested. Historians still argue whether this quiet power was genuinely empowering or simply a reflection of strict gender roles in a nomadic context. A quirky tidbit: the fierce loyalty of Mongol women to their families and tribes, often seen as a virtue, also meant they were powerful enforcers of social norms within the Ger, ensuring discipline and continuity. Imagine trying to get away with anything under the watchful eye of a Mongol matriarch. In essence, your life was a testament to the fact that strength comes in many forms. While the men rode out to conquer, you, the woman of the steppe, quietly conquered the daily challenges of survival, nurture, and continuity. You were the unshakable foundation, the tireless engine, and the enduring spirit of the Mongol world, a true embodiment of resilience, adaptability, and an undeniable, indispensable, quiet power. As we bring our journey to a close, let's take these final reflections on a long journey together. Tonight, you've lived a life of profound purpose and unwavering strength, experiencing firsthand what it meant to be a woman in the Mongol Empire. You've walked the steppe, felt the wind on your face, and understood the quiet rhythm of a life inextricably linked to the land and its creatures. The images of your days, filled with endless chores, fierce loyalties, and moments of simple beauty, begin to softly fade. You were a master of survival, transforming the raw materials of the steppe into sustenance, shelter, and clothing. Your hands, perpetually busy, were the architects of comfort in a harsh world. You learned to read the sky and the land, to understand the subtle language of animals, and to anticipate the capricious turns of nature. This profound connection to your environment wasn't a choice, but a living, breathing relationship that shaped your very being. Remember the scent of wood smoke mingled with fermented mare's milk in the Ger, the rhythmic thud of mallets on felt, the silent, knowing glance shared with another woman as you collaborated on a task, understanding perfectly what needed to be done without a single word. These are the quiet truths of your existence, often unwritten in history books, yet deeply felt in the fabric of your daily reality. We've seen how the rise and fall of a vast empire, built on male conquest, profoundly impacted your life, demanding resilience in the face of war and uncertainty. Yet, we've also witnessed the enduring strength of your roles as the economic backbone of the family, as the custodian of tradition, and in rare, inspiring instances, even as a powerful regent shaping the destiny of millions. Your spirit was as vast and unyielding as the steppe itself, a testament to the human capacity for endurance and contribution even in the most challenging of circumstances. Now, as the echoes of galloping hooves and the whispers of ancient songs gently recede, allow the imagery to soften around the edges. Feel the warmth of a fire on your skin, the quiet breath of sleeping children near you in the Ger. This life, though demanding, was also one of deep connection to family, to community, and to the boundless natural world. It was a life lived fully, purposefully, and with an unshakable inner strength. Let the quiet heroism of these women, their tireless work, and their enduring spirit settle gently in your mind. The journey is complete, and the echoes of their lives will remain. Sweet dreams.